now they come back to us, oh, by the way, I work in these government institutions now. I have a position and I want to give back. Now I want to actually be a donor myself. Many of them actually come back, become donors. And then not only that, it's like, I want to do capacity building. I want to actually help mentor the kids in rural areas. And they do that. They come back and then do that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Impact Interview. Today, I'm joined by Bu Wenda from Hoshizora Foundation. Hi, Bu Wenda. So happy to have you here today.
Hello, Mr. Gior. Happy to be here too.
Yeah, so we'd love to hear more about Hoshizora Foundation. Can you tell us a bit more about what the organization does and what the problem that your organization actually aims to tackle?
So Hoshizora Foundation is a not-for-profit who's actually focusing on providing education aids for children in Indonesia. Now, our NGO is quite unique because at the moment we're focusing on what we call the ecosystem concept to actually provide the education aids. We actually started with scholarships. Right. At the moment when I was a student in Japan, and then I was having some friends as well with me, we were actually donating around 1,000 yen, which is around $10 a month, to send several children to school in Indonesia. Because at the time, our focus was mostly about street children around our area, and we know they couldn't go to school. So we collected the money, and then we saw in the first month, second month, third month, it actually worked really well. It actually helped them to go to school. We told other people about the initiatives, and it grows from like 5, 10, 50, hundreds, and now thousands of kids actually go to school through a similar scholarship program. So long story short, in the journey for more than 10 years, we've seen that scholarship itself may not be enough to actually send a child to go to school and then finish school and become someone who's contributing to the society. Along the way, we found that there's actually a need for the ecosystem to support that particular child. And that's why we have some aids for the teachers, for the schools, for the parents, and for the community around them as well.
Yeah, so that was very interesting, and especially with the ecosystem concept. So obviously, like, an education system is just not about the scholarship program itself. So can you talk a bit more about like that particular program where you supported like the teachers and the parents as well, and how has that impacted the students who actually benefit from your scholarship?
Yeah, so the scholarship program itself, it actually comprises of two components. So the first one is obviously giving financial support for the students to go to school. And by the way, when we say financial support, in many areas in Indonesia, the basic education usually is free. However, there are actually surrounding fees like buying books, uniforms, or if they live in remote areas, they need to have transport fee to go to school. And you can imagine in like an archipelago like Indonesia, from one little island to another island is so expensive. So those scholarships mostly actually help the students to fulfill all these needs to enable them to go to school. And then we also give them capacity building. So that's another part of ecosystem that we do. We actually have training, giving them social skills development program. We talk about what they want to do, help them to give context about what can they do with their futures. And then at the same time, when we give the scholarships, we also find the needs that somebody needs to help to monitor how the scholarship money is actually being used or being actually utilized for the education aid. We want to make sure it's actually clean, no misuse of the donation fund. And also, most importantly, we need somebody external to help to see their motivations, monitor what they do in school. And that's where we started engaging the teachers. So we do have hundreds of teachers across Indonesia, which we call the Coordinator Wilayah or the area coordinator. They are local teachers who are actually doing this on a volunteer basis. They have several children under their guardianship to actually look after them. And at the same time, with the teachers, we also engage the parents. Sometimes it's the parents, sometimes it's the grandparents, sometimes it's actually the guardians of these kids. Why? Because the education of these kids not only happening in school, it also happens at home. Yeah. And many times the decision maker for someone to actually go to education to school, especially when they go to high school or higher education, and if they're female, they're girls, even if it's harder to actually go to higher education, the voice of the parents actually matter a lot. And that's why we do have parents' meetings. We actually have seminars for parents about education programs for kids. What's the meaning of the education? We even say you can support your kids to be in school and actually support them at home so that they can actually do well in schools. So those three components are very much interacted. The larger area, the larger peripheral of this one is basically engaging the schools, and we do have a lot of engagements with schools, the teachers in the schools, obviously the local area teachers included, some headmasters who are actually helping to help us to deliver all these programs. And by the way, Honsisora visits these kids in remote areas a couple of times a year. And at that time, obviously, we need a venue, we need some engagement, and schools, headmasters, and community leaders have been very helpful as well.
Right. And I want to tackle that specific point you mentioned about like the parenting side. So I think especially in rural areas, there are also the typical trade-off of like pursuing education for, let's say, they want to get to work. How do you convince those beneficiaries to actually pursue education as opposed to looking in the short term of like getting that job?
Yeah. In the beginning, I'll be very honest, it was not an easy thing to do. Because most people in rural areas, they always think, even though my child goes to, or for example, just finish high school, the type of job he or she will do will be the same. Maybe he or she will go into the field, or maybe become fisherman, or maybe just selling vegetables in the market, right? So that's what they think in the very beginning. However, we started to actually show them there are actually success stories out there. And these success stories actually come from people surround you, from people in your village or the next village, or maybe an island. And then we show those success stories for them. In the beginning, the success stories came from, obviously because Hosisor was very young at the time, it didn't really come from us, but it came from the role models that we knew. But now it's been more than 10 years that I've been doing Hosisor since I was in uni, right? So we've had kids, students, now the ladies and gentlemen who have finished school or even like finished universities, and we brought them back, and then we actually told the parents, look, these kids actually went through this journey, and then now they finish their degree, they could work well, or they establish a business, or some of them actually become medical people. They come back to the village and do amazing stuff to the village. So this is what change we want to see. So we have to actually show them it's possible. You have to dream very high, but at the same time, show them the practical examples and the practical path how to go there. Obviously, you can say, oh, wow, there's a billionaire out there who's doing well, but if it doesn't really connect with them, it's very hard. So it's always like showing the practical path, I think is very important. And then having that connectivity with someone who's close to them and become a role model from that local area is also very important to convince the parents.
And you also mentioned like there's a lot of like success stories that you've built. So I'm curious in terms of like the numbers itself, like to this day, like can you tell me like how many students you've supported, how many teachers, schools you're involved with?
Currently, I think there are more than 3,000 students. And then these 3,000 students actually range from elementary school until university level. And then we have more than 1,300 plus alumni. Alumni means people who had our scholarship and they already graduated now. And then we have nearly 200 local area coordinators, or around 200 teachers that actually work with us. And then we cover around 26 provinces and all over Indonesia as well. We have many kids coming from all over Indonesia, from the tip of Sumatra in Aceh until Papua,
Wow.
till Borneo, in Eastern South Tenggara, in Halmahera, all over. So it's all over Indonesia at the moment. It's more needs-based and potential-based, say it that way. And obviously, when I say needs-based, we would like to actually help those who are underprivileged and really need the help to progress their education. And obviously, we want to see the potentials of the students as well. That's why when we want to give scholarship, we do have a process to actually select our scholarship recipients. And the other thing that we've seen as well, we want to make sure we have confidence that this scholarship program can work. And that's why before we go to a village or an area, we usually have assessment of the students as well as the areas and whether we have the support. And then the teachers that I mentioned to you before, the local area teachers, we usually want to make sure at least we have someone connected to that particular scholarship recipient so that that monitoring is actually happening as well.
Right. And I think in terms of like that relationship, I think your flagship program was called the Kakak and Adik Bintang. So maybe can you talk a bit more about that and like to what extent does the relationship, go?
So yes, actually that's true. The Kakak Bintang and Adik Bintang actually was born when we were in universities. Obviously, at that time, the kids that we helped, their age were very like obviously elementary school kids and high school kids, but we were also like
Yeah.
kids ourselves. I think we were like teenagers and like students at that time. And so we started with that word, Kakak Bintang and Adik Bintang. We think we're a little bit older than the kids at that time, so we call ourselves Kakak. Kakak in Indonesian means older sibling. And then we call the kids that we help Adik Bintang. Adik means like younger siblings.
Right.
So we started that, and we like the idea of Kakak and Adik because it has this familiarity between the older siblings and the younger siblings, that the older siblings actually become the role model and then help the younger siblings, which in our country, Indonesia, is a very common culture to have that familiarity inside the family. And then we want the scholarship program is not only just giving financial support, but also the guidance. And that's where, because we have that very close relationship at the time when I first started, it's only a very small number of children, I still remember. We write letters to the kids in Indonesia. We actually call them. We send them like books and school bags and things like that, like small things,
Wow.
pencil cases. And then we know, actually motivational support. And then being a mentor for our younger siblings or these Adik Bintang are very important. And it continues until today, 10 plus years after. Our flagship program is still Kakak Bintang and Adik Bintang. We want to actually preserve that spirit of the mentorships from someone who's more experienced to someone who is actually pursuing their journey, for someone who's been looking many things in life to someone who's just started to build their education as well. We still have the program for Kakak Bintang to write letters to Adik Bintang. And that's why Hosisora, by the way, that scholarship program that we have is now a little bit digitalized as well. We have a very personalized portal for the donor to actually see the letters and the pictures from the Adik Bintang. And why we do that, because we want Kakak Bintang to actually feel they're close enough, but obviously at the same time still protecting the privacy of the kids that we actually help. So we created that portal. And so far we've been receiving many support from Kakak Bintang and saying, I really feel I'm part of my Adik Bintang's journey. We invited Kakak Bintang to the graduation with the Adik Bintang. They really feel like we're here together, and it's amazing when we see our Adik Bintang graduated. It's such an achievement for both Kakak Bintang and Adik Bintang.
Yes, and I think I really love like the emotional connection that's there, because like it's not just about like receiving that scholarship, but also like navigating the challenges of like education itself. I think I just want to touch a bit more about like the education aspect. Obviously like the world around us is changing so fast. We have new things like AI and digital literacy, and how do you adjust this program so that people that are receiving your scholarship can also don't fall behind in terms of like these trends?
Yeah. So at Hosisora, when we actually do our capacity building and what I call education support program, it's like extracurricular activities, we do have specialists in the team who's actually developing curriculum, which is then tied with impact assessment. So through that, we've been looking to refresh that every certain period. Obviously, what we thought was correct 10 years back will not be able to be implemented as per se today. And that's why that curriculum refresh is actually very important. And then we tie it with the impact assessment to actually see whether we actually really make an impact. And during the journey as well, we know that we cannot do it ourselves, right? Because we have to focus on what are the core activities of ours, and at the same time also to look after many of our scholarship recipients at the same time. So we also have partners, and these partners help us to deliver training, capacity building programs. Obviously, we pick and choose the ones that actually align with our values and the ones that actually we really need based on the core curriculum that my team has been developing. So again, the word ecosystem and partnership is very important here, because it takes a village to raise a child. It takes even the whole world and the whole country to actually educate the children in the country. And we believe in that. And
Right. And I noticed that you keep mentioning the word impact assessment. So I think like just before our session recording, you said impact, and then like just now you said impact. So can you tell me what is the impact assessment process for Hoshizora? Like what do you measure yourself against, and like what methodologies, what frameworks do you use when trying to assess that impact and then eventually communicating it?
Obviously, there are on a high level two ways to do it. The way we do it in Hoshizora. The first one is to see the outcome first. What's the outcome of our activities? And then we do it throughout our activities. So when we have a capacity building program or a training or some sort of program, the easiest way is actually to have a survey after the activity. And sometimes we have a pre-activity survey and post-activity survey to actually see the outcome. And then we have interviews and focus groups to see how we are doing. So that's the short-term thing that is quite achievable for us, and I'm pretty sure many NGOs are doing it as well. In addition to that outcome measurement, we do have this impact measurement, which is a more serious thing to do. It's basically, for example, I'll just give you an example. Our scholarship program is actually helping kids or students since they were in elementary until they finish high school, and if they're actually good enough, obviously until they finish university. So it's a longer journey. So we would like to actually see the impact of our program, the scholarships, and the capacity building on this ecosystem support around them. How is it actually impacting their journey in education? So it's starting with, is there any behavior changes? How about the dropout rates? How about their journey? Do they continue or not? So we actually do continuous impact assessment through, again, to data, usually through survey, through interviews. And then we have like parameters. And these parameters are not just like parameters that you change every now and then. No. So we thought about it in a very thorough way. What are the parameters we want to change? And if you remember, I mentioned to you about the curriculum.
Yes.
So that curriculum, obviously, the contents may change because our world is changing. But the core values that we actually have there is usually consistent. Why? Because we want to actually, our aspiration, our long-term aspiration is actually to produce or to actually have these young adults who are actually possessing positive traits. Things like they are resilient, for example. They're actually having aspirations. They have this willing to actually contribute back to community. So all these aspirations, all these traits we mapped into our curriculum. And then we have certain parameters how to measure the behaviors and the result and the outcome, which will then actually show you that in 1 year, this is the impact. In 3 years, this is the impact. In 5 years, this is the impact. So it's a very long-term process. And obviously in the process, we use all this theory of change, the social return of investment, and making sure we actually claim the impact that we make. We don't overclaim as well. We don't want to have any social impact washing it. So it's a lot of effort in it. And I'm not alone, obviously. I'm very lucky. Throughout these couple of years, I have past and current Hoshizora staff who have been actually building this system properly.
And you mentioned, you are actively, you have a great team behind you, and
Oh yeah.
kudos to them.
They're great. Trust me, they are.
Shout
I
out
can't
to
do it
them.
myself. We cannot do it ourselves. Yeah.
Other than that, like, what do you attribute the success of Hoshizora to the scale that it's able to support so many children across Indonesia today?
I guess there are a couple of things that help us to stick together. Number one, I'm very proud of my co-founders that we stick together until today.
Yeah.
We've been friends for many years. You can imagine we were actually students in Japan.
Wow.
Having lunch in our beautiful cafeteria. That cafeteria is very beautiful.
Yeah.
And then we actually put money on the table. We said we want to do it. We stick together until today, even though we live in different countries now. It's amazing. The same spirit, the spirit to give back is there. And that spirit of give back is always the one that we tell to people who are partnering with us, who are actually now helping Hoshizora, who are working with us, who are partners, that if you have something more, you know what? In Indonesia, we go, if you have rizki, you have some blessings, you want to give it up to the community as well.
Yeah.
And that spirit is there. That's number one. Number two, obviously, as we scale up, that concept, I love the word ecosystem, is very important.
Yeah.
Right? We cannot do it alone. Yes, the co-founders, how many of us? Not even like 10 people. It's like less than that, 5 people of us. We do it up to this level, but when we want to scale up and make it bigger, we need more people and we need more network. we have to build ecosystems, and that's where that ecosystem concept that we've been actually implementing have been really helping us in doing that. And obviously number three is basically adaptability and agility. Why? We really felt these things in many different ways. So the first one was when the tsunami happened in 2011. At the time, Hosisora was in the early stage. We had a lot of donors who couldn't support us anymore from Japan because of the tsunami, and then we have to have that empathy as well. In Japan, it's quite in a very sad situation at the time. So we had to actually think about what's next for our kids in Indonesia. So we really have to adapt our model. We have to be agile in doing that. And then the second one was during COVID, as you remember. It was not easy at all for us, for an organization, obviously from operation perspective, and moreover, to support the kids in remote areas. I don't know if you've been to remote areas, no internet, no electricity. Some kids never went to school for 3 months. You can imagine that. Some teachers were really sad, really demotivated. That part was really hard, to make sure the kids were staying in school and not just getting married at the age of 14 or 15. It's so hard. But I guess that adaptability, agility, I remember our team said, maybe we should do education this way. We should actually localize the education. The way we teach mathematics should actually be very local, not just using textbook and everything. I've seen my team really work hard, overcome these challenges.
Right. And I love, the shout out to the team. I think huge kudos to them as well for trying through tough times. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of those cases before. Do you have any recollection of your most memorable experiences during Hosisora Foundation, and how those kids are today from where they were when you supported them?
Oh, there are many. There are many of them.
It wouldn't be
So many of them are now in their 20s. Obviously, I have to be honest, right? Out of these thousands of students, not all of them went to university.
Yes.
But then the way we measure success in life is not always by having a master's degree, having a PhD, or even working for a very fancy company. Success comes in many different forms, right? And going back to the basic, in Hosisora, we believe in the core values, in the attributes, in the good traits of facilitating the growth of the students, so that when they come out from school or from university, they actually possess these values. They can first be self-sufficient. They can actually be independent, self-sufficient for themselves. And then they need to have that feeling about, I want to give back, especially to where I belong, to where I come from, and then to other people around me who are actually needed. And from the perspective, I've seen many, many good stories and many good examples that these students actually they went to school, they finished school, whether it's high school or university, they got a job or they built a business, and they came back and then really give back. So I've seen someone who studied veterinarian to actually help animals, and
Yes.
then we asked, why do you want to do that? I said, in my village we don't have a vet. When cows and chickens are actually sick, it's very hard. It's just devastating to see the farmers then. And then that person actually went back and then helped the village, for example. I've seen many actually went to do business degrees, and then they work into institutions, and now they come back to us. Oh, by the way, I work in these government institutions now. I have a position and I want to give back. Now I want to actually be a donor myself. Many of them actually come back, become donors. And then not only that, it's I want to do capacity building. I want to actually help mentor the kids in rural areas, and they do that. They come back and then do that. We also have several interesting. I'm very thankful for these ladies. By the way, they were our scholarship recipients, and they say, "I've seen how Hosisora work. I want to help more people. I want to join Hosisora." So I have several people, and it's amazing the way we actually see them. They actually now talk with partners, talking about this program is great. In fact, look at me now. I stand with Hosisora. I work for Hosisora and I do this. And then the other one actually sits in our education division. She's very, very empathetic towards the kids because she's been there before.
Yeah.
So I've seen many of them, and I'm very thankful that most cases that I've seen, actually most of them, I don't remember anyone who doesn't want to, but I think most of them actually always want to give back and want to be role models. I think that's a success story itself.
Yes, and I think like that's a testament to like how successful the program is in implementing that core value you mentioned about like giving it back, right? And I think we've heard like the stories and how amazing it is. Like if people want to support your organization, like what kind of support do you need, and like how can people support you?
There are many ways to do it. Our flagship program, Kakak Bintang Adik Bintang, is still there. So people still do donate that $10 a month to send one elementary kids to school. That's still there. Obviously, when the child goes to high school, the amount is a little bit higher because the needs actually more. So people can be individual donors like that. Some people do donation ad hoc. So what I mean ad hoc, they do maybe once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year, and there's no minimum donation. You can just donate that way. Some corporates actually donate in the format of scholarship as well as program. So I have this particular corporate. Actually, I want to do scholarship program, but at the same time, I want to contribute to the teacher development program, for example, or some trainings. And then some corporates also donate in the format of goods. Right, I have in the past I have the World Bank and the Foreign Ministry of Indonesia. They donate like PCs, tablets, laptops, and things like that. So that's possible.
You mentioned that $10 donation, which is roughly 100,000 rupiah today. Yeah, roughly. But how does that break down in terms of like, how does that $100,000 translate? What is the breakdown of like what is it put into the program and so on? Maybe if you have some insight on that as well, that would be really great. Yeah.
So for that particular 100,000 rupiahs, that's for elementary school, by the way. The concept is to give 100% of the benefit back to the children. So what does it mean? So at least 80% will go into a donation to fund their education, whether it's actually to get books, to actually do to help them to transport to go to school and so on. And these kids, we actually have in our curriculum, we want them to log the expenses. So be responsible towards your own money. We ask parents to do it if they're a bit small, but when they're actually a bit bigger, we actually ask them to log their expenses, keep the receipt and everything, so we know you actually use it for educational purposes. And then the rest, around maybe around 20% or even less, it goes to the capacity building programs. As you know, we do have a curriculum, and then we deliver trainings, whether it's actually virtual or on-site for these kids. And we actually give them educational goods as well. That actually goes there. Because we believe, again, the scholarship needs to give some sort of financial support, which is actually mainly that one. But in the surrounding, that needs to actually be equipped with all this capacity building, motivation, and this extracurricular development program as well. So we just want to make sure the 100% benefit actually goes to them. And that's what we'll be doing with this Kakak Bintang Adik Bintang program.
Yes, that sounds really great. And I think just to close things off, if people want to learn more about like where Hoshizora is and support the organization, where can they find you guys on like the digital space as well?
Yeah. So it's basically our website. So it's actually hoshizora.org. We're in Instagram, we're in LinkedIn, various social media. And by the way, fun fact, if you don't know the meaning of Hoshizora, because we were actually in Japan before.
Right.
Background of the Japanese thing is Hoshi means star.
Okay.
And then Zora means sky. So we really want our kids to have dreams and to reach the stars and to be stars in their own way.
Thank you so much for your time, Boo, and really appreciate that you're sharing about what Hoshizora is. So people, if you want to support Hoshizora, there's the way to go and support Indonesia's future generations through education.